Welcome back to the IBFP. Here's your host, Boxing News.
Welcome back, fight fans. Welcome back. Let's just dig right into it. Shawn Showtime Porter states that Errol Spence Jr. has never faced adversity in the ring, and he's grown arrogant. And so let's just break it down honestly and unbiasedly and look at Errol Spence Jr. as a fighter. Has Errol Spence Jr. ever faced true adversity in the ring? Has he ever been challenged or tested in the way that we can judge how good Errol Spence Jr. is? And let's just break it down honestly and unbiasedly. Now, when we look at Errol Spence Jr., he's a pretty good fighter. Overall, no one's disputing that. He's an undefeated IBF world champion. He has pretty good size and reach, power for 147 pounds. And he's a fighter that many see being able to move up and compete in other divisions. So let's just break it down, and we start looking at his resume, and we start with the Kell Brook fight, and we see Errol Spence Jr. lost a few rounds in a competitive fight that was competitive early, but most people wouldn't say that he was tested with true adversity, because Kell Brook himself was a completely and utterly damaged fighter. You know, Kell Brook had moved up in weight in the prior fight to face Gennady Golovkin, who in turn knocked him out, broke his eye socket, and pretty much ruined his career. He you know, you got to give Kell Brook the credit for moving up in weight, trying to be great, but Gennady Golovkin pretty much destroyed him. And Errol Spence Jr., you know, he got a guy that was weight drained, coming back down to 147 with no tune-up after a long layoff, after healing from an eye surgery, and after being knocked out. So, you know, you can't expect to qualify that as true adversity when Kell Brook gassed out in the fight, was never the same fighter, and was completely and utterly damaged from the Triple G fight. So he never faced true adversity, a true test. Although Kell Brook did give him some good rounds, it was not enough to truly put, Errol Spence Jr. through true and a rigorous adversity in a tough fight. And so then you see that Demetrius Andrade called out Errol Spence Jr. to come fight at 160 pounds. Errol Spence Jr. already stated that he'd be willing to go up to 160 to fight at Canelo Alvarez. So he stated he'd move up to 160 to fight Canelo Alvarez to get a belt in a different division. And when Demetrius Andrade offered him the same situation, the same opportunity to get a belt in a higher weight class, Errol Spence Jr. bypassed that because he was not interested in daring to be great. He was not interested in being a multiple division world champion. And I understand why. Demetrius Andrade has skills Errol Spence simply does not. But that would be the type of fight that would show Errol Spence Jr. going through adversity and seeing if he had the ability to make the adjustments needed against top level opposition. And so, but you see Errol Spence Jr. after that, he ends up taking a fight with Mikey Garcia, a guy who actually moved up 2 weight classes to challenge him. Although Errol Spence is not interested in moving up to challenge other fighters at the moment, he did take on a fighter who was moving up to challenge him, a fighter with no belt, and he took on the fight, and it was an interesting fight. You know, Errol Spence Jr. had no adversity in that. He dominated Mikey Garcia. He fought a fearful fight, staying on the outside, using his height and reach, and pretty much staying in the high guard to avoid all of Mikey Garcia's power shots. So you give Errol Spence Jr. Credit for fighting an extremely defensive fight and being offensive as necessary, because, you know, he was keeping Mikey Garcia out of range. But on the pay-per-view, people wanted to see him go through adversity, and this was the type of fight that people wanted to see Errol Spence Jr. plow through Mikey Garcia. And he didn't plow through Mikey Garcia. He didn't destroy Mikey Garcia or knock him down. And after that type of fight with no adversity, Errol Spence Jr. by CBS Boxing was announced that he should be considered as one of the best pound for pound in the sport, and maybe even the best. That's egregious reporting in media, because that's completely biased and dishonest. You don't get credit for beating a guy moving up 2 weight classes who can present no true opposition to you. And so then you see Errol Spence Jr. takes on Lamont Peterson. And when he takes on Lamont Peterson was a C-level fighter who was already knocked out by Lucas Matthysse in the 3rd round. Errol Spence Jr. took at least twice as long to stop Lamont. But even then, they threw in the towel. It wasn't a vicious or brutal knockout. It was basically just an accumulation of punishment that they felt that, you know, Lamont Peterson had enough, and he didn't have enough to win the fight at that point. So then you see Lamont Peterson in his very next fight take on a Sergey Lipinets, who's moved up to 147 pounds from 140, and he was completely dominated, outclassed, and viciously knocked out. His career ended by a guy like Sergey Lipinets. And so at the end of the day, we know now that Lamont Peterson was a completely done fighter. We know he was shot, and that's the reason why he presented absolutely no test, and he deserves no credit for beating him, because at the end of the day, Errol Spence Jr. faced no adversity fighting this lower tier level of opposition. position. We have to be honest and unbiased. And then you see Errol Spence Jr. facing a Carlos Ocampo who's a domestic level tomato can, a guy who's never competed in the United States or at a top level other than Errol Spence Jr. Errol Spence stops him in the first round, so that was never a true testament or test of how good Errol Spence could be or is. And like Roy Jones Jr. stated, we'll know exactly how good Errol Spence Jr. is after the Shawn Porter fight when he's challenged and see if he can finally go through some adversity. But once again, unbiased as always, it's the IBFP. Please share, like, and you must absolutely subscribe.